trying to make it all make sense.
The
More
You
No
Podcast.
So today I want to discuss something that legendary heavyweight boxer Evander Holyfield discussed on Joe Rogan's podcast the other day. And it surrounds some financial advice that I think is some of the most simple and clear I've ever heard, and is also one of the most important things to understand. Now, more people than not in America are overspending, as well as being in a tremendous amount of debt. And this is something that highly hinders going down the pursuits of living a life of significance. There's really nothing that holds somebody back more than financial issues, which largely surround overspending and going into debt. And overspending and going into debt kind of go hand in hand. So the advice that Evander gave when discussing how he thought about finances with Joe Rogan is to only do what you can afford to do. Now, this is pretty self-explanatory, but as I said, many people don't keep this in mind. All it is simply not spending money unless you know with 100% certainty that you can afford to spend that money. So to put this in context, I want to use the example that Evander Holyfield discussed on Joe Rogan's podcast. So Evander Holyfield built a huge mansion. It was 54,000 square feet on 175 acres. Joe Rogan thought that was obviously such a crazy house to build, but Evander Holyfield explained that it cost $20 million, and as with everything else, he knew with 100% certainty that he could afford to build this house. And he ultimately had to sell the house, and he sold the house for a tremendous loss. As I said, he built it for $20 million, and he was only able to sell it for $5 million to rapper Rick Ross. But it was no big deal that he took a $15 million loss on the home, because the only reason he built it was knowing with 100% certainty that he could afford to do so, that he could afford to lose that $20 million. So technically, he still came out $5 million ahead with the perspective that he maintains. So as I stated, there's two clear things that really get in the way of this mentality surrounding finances of only doing what you can afford to do. And these are debt and overspending. So with debt is just simply when you owe money to somebody, and with debt, it typically has interest that goes with it. And so this is where the trouble comes, because that interest compounds, and what that means is that the amount that you owe continually builds, and this can make it extremely hard to get out of debt. Sometimes it's reasonable and necessary to bring on debt, but you should only do so if you know that you'll be able to pay it off in a short period of time. So an example surrounding this that I can think of is getting a computer science degree using student loans. So the student could go to community college, and there's plenty of grants at community college on top of how affordable it is for their first 2 years or so. And then when they're ready to transfer, they could bring on debt through college loans for those last 2 years to complete the bachelor's degree in computer science. Now they may have $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 worth of debt from these couple years, but it's safe to say with a bachelor's degree in computer science that that loan will be able to be paid off in only a handful of years, because the starting salary for somebody with a bachelor's in computer science is around $40,000 to $60,000, and within a handful of years, that average goes up to somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000. And what this means is that that debt that student brought on can be paid in a short period of time, and before bringing on the debt, they know that if they put in the necessary time and effort, that in a short period of time, it will all be paid off, and their life will be improved from it. And so the second thing that gets in the way of following this financial advice is overspending. And overspending is simply just looking at Evander Holyfield's financial advice in the opposite light. You're just simply doing and not considering what you can afford to do. So overspending is spending money that you know you're going to need in the future. And many people overspend unknowingly, and that lack of awareness is largely just due to not taking financial advice like this into account. Many people get caught in the trap of spending money in the present moment that they know they can't afford to spend in the long term. And this ranges from buying a product or going out to eat. More people than not spend money that they can't afford and overspend going out to eat. And simply to not overspend, all you have to do is, before making any form of a purchase, consider this financial advice, which is to only do what you can afford to do. If you can't afford to do what you're about to purchase, then don't make that purchase and don't spend that money. So as you go through life and you're pursuing a life of significance, never forget this simple financial advice. Remembering to only do what you can afford to do is something that will keep you out of a tremendous amount of trouble, as well as ensuring that you won't be faced with financial issues as you go down your path of living a life of significance. I hope this talk makes a positive impact in your life. Please subscribe to the podcast wherever you are listening or watching it. Check out other episodes, leave a review, and follow us on social media at More You Know Pod. Also, please don't forget about our sweepstakes. Retweet a clip with the hashtag #TheMoreYouKnow and new podcast from our Twitter for a chance to win a signed copy of my upcoming book, The More You Know. Tag 2 friends in the comments on a clip on Instagram for a chance to win a brand new copy of Dean Graziosi's Millionaire Mindset or Ed Milet's Max Out. Like us or share a clip on Facebook for a chance to win a book I have read that highly inspired me, signed by me with an inspirational message. Again, thank you for listening as we propel with podcasting through the more you know.
I'm just trying to make it all make sense.
The More You
No
Podcast.